All right, this is the Noir Hour, and I'm sitting here with Bryan Belleau, sorry,
It's all good.
Woods of Ypres. Man, what is going on?
Oh, not too much. Just kind of sweating it out up here in the far north, but we're taking it one day at a time, as we always do up here.
Yeah, how is life in Canada?
Oh, that's about as broad stroke as the question as you can imagine. But if I had to compare it to anything else, which my comparison's very little, but I would say for the most part, we're very community based. We love each other up here, and we do the best we can to practice mannerisms and just lean in on each other from time to time.
Yeah,
That's that's kind of how I like to introduce Canada to the rest of the world. Obviously there's good and bad to every side of every country, but I'd like to highlight my experience in this country, which has been
yeah,
nothing but awesome.
yeah. I think the closest I've ever come to Canada was right around Detroit when I was younger, doing shows. And I know you've probably done some shows up there as well, but never been to Canada.
Ca-
So it's pretty cool
Canada's
to.
the good on you for the Detroit show. Actually, I'm not from where I live now, so I lived a lot closer to the Detroit than I did before. So I'm up in Fort Nelson, uh, British Columbia now, which, to put things into perspective, is roughly about an hour and a half from the Northwest Territory border. So that, like, way, way north, and I'm about 4,000 kilometers away from my original home in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, which has a Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, which in turn is part of the same state as Detroit. So when we would tour Ontario, we would often go down to like Windsor, where Detroit was right across the pond.
Yeah.
And we'd spend a lot of time doing shows in Windsor, Ontario, which was one of my favorite times of life. But man, she got hot down there. Even well, I shouldn't say hot by your standard, but nonetheless, she'd get pretty spicy down there, and
Yeah.
we'd sit in the van together and sweat hard and just kind of look at each other like, "Don't say it, man. Put your headphones on and shut up."
Well, let's get into talking about some Woods of Ypres. When did you first start? How did you know David, and how did that all come about?
So we were part of the same music scene in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. I was very much doing Gates of Winter with my boys, and Woods of Ypres was part of the same music scene. So at the time, geez, I got to remember when we all kind of got this thing started in 2007 or eight. What happened was David was teaching English in South Korea, and we were emailing each other. This is back in the days when like MySpace was a thing. So
Yeah.
we had this like little pump up deal. It was like, okay, let's see how many followers we can get versus Woods of Ypres. And then that little competition, I think, just proved each other's worth that, wait a minute, maybe we want to be the same entity. And so um, we said, well, let's get you back on Canadian soil. When you're there, we'll we'll kind of pull double duty. We'll be Gates of Winter and we'll do Woods of Ypres with the same lineup. So it was kind of a rare instance where Woods of Ypres had all the members of Gates of Winter for a very short time. There is video of that exact lineup. If you search DC Music Factory in Toronto, there was a specific show with that lineup. It was probably the biggest lineup in history, but that's how we kind of got our introduction to it. Once he came back, um, I remember the first time I seen David, I looked him in the eye and I said, I don't know what it is about you, but I know there's something special that I need to share this time of my life. And I'm gonna do that. And
Yeah.
he kind of just he would look at me, and the biggest compliment you can get from David, if you knew David, is you get a nod. That was it. You get that. Yep. The grim.
Yeah.
And I felt like, wow, okay, let's do this. But I was never starstruck or anything like that. I didn't feel like I was walking something over my head. I just said, I'm going to make my contribution to this. I'm going to do the
Yeah.
best job that I can, and we'll see this through. And I'll be damned. I learned, not lost. I learned so many lessons just from performing in that band. David was an amazing teacher. Even if it was hard at times, there was always something to learn there, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for those times that we got to spend together. So that's kind of a long-winded answer of how things started in the
Yeah.
beginning, but that's how it happened.
That's awesome. Yeah, the first time I heard Woods of Ypres, I think it was in 2012. I was
Hmm.
super late to music. I'd always listen to music, but I was late to the internet. I guess that's a
Hmm.
better thing to say. So I did a lot of backtracking, learning, really discovering all my favorite bands, but going backwards. I mean, so when I first heard Woods of Ypres, David had passed. And
Hmm.
did you ever think that this band would have such a cult following around it? I mean, it's been almost 10 years or more since Woods has no longer been together. And
It
I don't know if I mean, I'm sure that you see it, but especially in my group and my bubble of people, man, Woods of Ypres is at the top of everybody's list. Did you ever think with all the time that's passed that it would still be so relevant and mean so much?
I did. I did even back then, and I treated it with a great responsibility. And I knew that um, getting a big bubble head about it would be the wrong approach. And I was simply um, like a soldier in the pack. I wanted to just put in my time and do my duty and fulfill that responsibility, because the reach of influence that I knew it was going to have, and already did have for that matter, because there was 3 albums in before even I came along. So I knew that following was already very much intact. And I thought to myself, I don't want to let down what's already there. I must kind of step up and do my part to continue on the legacy that is Woods of Ypres. And it certainly became far and wide. I guess the part that kind of blows my mind is that it reached all 4 corners of the earth. It's one of the reasons why I even got to learn who Matt Lidwin was, a good
Yeah,
friend of mine he's kind of our binding agent here.
right.
It, it was pretty awesome to see that influence.
Yeah. Well, and Matt, he's real close with Bam, and I think Woods of Ypres has stretched out to so many places. And I was going to ask you about you playing with Matt in the Wet Leather cover, and now I think you played on Everything Dies, correct?
Yes, yes.
So that's pretty
Uh,
cool.
it, it was kind of funny. I don't know if you can call it a cover if you've performed it originally, but
Right.
yeah, we'll go with it. That was his introduction to me. So, uh, hoping I'm recounting this the same way Mr. Lidwin recounts it, but Bam showed Matt Woods of Ypres, thus reaching out to Mama Gold, saying, "I want to do a cover of Wet Leather." Mama Gold in turn said, "You need to talk to Bryan." And I came into the mix and ended up starting a wonderful relationship with Mr. Lidwin. And we we did that track, went over swimmingly. And then when this came along with the Everything Dies, I'll tell you some inside information about this track and how it pertains to Woods of Ypres and myself. So back in I think it was around 2009 ish. Um, I could have the dates fogged. It's been so long, but there was a point in time, and I still have this list, okay, of songs that Woods of Ypres was going to do a covers album. This was one of the tracks that was going to be on it. So I felt like that was finally kind of realizing that. And I thought to myself, I don't want to let down what's already there. I must kind of step up and do my part to fulfill that responsibility. So I felt like that was finally kind of realizing that. And so I put my Woods shoes on for that recording, and I kind of mixed two realms. So in Woods of Ypres, I play my famous, well, I shouldn't say famous. I'm not like a friggin' superstar or anything, but my Woods guitar. So the
Yeah.
Woods guitar is just this. It's got the sticker on the bottom that says Woods of Ypres. That's my 6 string guitar. But for this one, I grabbed my 7 string and I beefed up the chords to get a little extra grit and dirt and chug. So that was my acrobatic Gates of Winter guitar, where I do all my shredding stuff. But I thought this track needs to have some thick, milky layers of grief. So I thought, what better instrument to use than my weapon of choice from back in the day, my old trusty Ibanez 7 string. So that's how those two tracks kind of came to life. And then when Mr. Lidwin added his presence to that track, I thought, wow, this is really something special. And props to Cam DeWald on bass, phenomenal job. I have a critical ear, and I listen for when something's off or on. Smack on the head, just amazing. And
Yeah.
so those boys really brought it together, and I was proud to be part of that. And I think we're going to do some more work together here in the
Yeah.
near future.
Well, that's awesome. Have you done much have you been in many bands or done much musically since Woods besides this?
Yes, but not in the way you might imagine. So after I left Woods, I actually just um, moved. No, I went to college. I went to college. I got electrical instrumentation technology, and then I went to Fort Nelson up here to go to work. So I, in turn, changed my entire life. I came out here like a fish out of water, and then I met my wife,
Yeah.
who is a pianist and singer. So she had these skills already, and I thought, oh wow, well let's do something. So we ended up cutting 2 albums of our own and touring Canada with them. So we did do musical stuff, and then kind of did a bunch of, but it's all like more of the folk, the jazz,
Yeah.
the contemporary kind of stuff. So yeah, I've been active in music in that way, but every once in a while that old lion roars and you can hear it. And that's why Mr. Lidwin coming along was a blessing in disguise for me, because I'm like, geez, I got all this equipment. What am I going to do with it now?
Yeah.
There's no way to let the lead out. So I capitalized on that opportunity as much as I could.
Yeah, well, hopefully you keep doing that. It's because sorry, the songs they sound great, especially the little twist on Wet Leather. I probably heard that song a million times. So it sounded really, it sounded great. I really
It,
enjoyed
it
that.
was it was an honor to do that. And what stands out to me is when uh, back in 2012, right when you were getting an introduction to Woods, we were coming together for a show to commemorate David in Sault Ste. Marie. So I flew back home, and all these bands were doing cover songs live, and I was just shocked because I don't remember ever having that experience of watching so many people cover something that you've been part of. And
Yeah.
so I remember Wet Leather in specific was done by the band Kitty. And I remember walking up to Tara McLeod after it was done. She was the lead guitarist for Kitty. And she played the Wet Leather solo. I just walked up and I was like, you nailed it. I wrote that shit and you nailed it. Good job. And she's just like, wow, that's you. I was like, yeah, it's totally awesome. Like, it's an honor to meet you guys. What a bizarre experience to even have some other band play your songs in front of you.
Yeah.
Just like, whoa, this is crazy. So it really showed me how big of a impact that Woods of Ypres played on this. I really feel like David accomplished what he set out to do, and that he made his mark on this earth unequivocally. And I love being part of that in some small way.
Yeah. Yeah. It really seemed like the last album. It almost it almost kind of put it almost was like it kind of outlined his passing. Listening to it and all the songs, "Kiss My Ashes Goodbye" and all these things. It was almost like a swan song out. Um, and I know that he passed very close to his home in a was it an auto accident. But listening back to that album, it's very eerie to me.
Oh, absolutely. I get that a lot for sure. And the the content was, when we were in the bands, you always think, wow, you gotta kind of delve into the pit of your grief to get the true content. And I think you could certainly feel that when you listen to that music, and especially if you read along with the lyrics and kind of get into it. Um, it was an absolute tragic ending, and he he passed in, I think it was around Barrie, Ontario, which is probably around 6 hours south of home, and it, it was it was one crazy set of news to get, and I remember where I was sitting in this chair in Fort Nelson when I got the news, and I was just like, whoa. This it almost like froze in my tracks. I was just like, this is wild, because like I had it wasn't so long where I had just spoken to him, because we'd stay in touch online, and he's asking me what I thought of the new album, because I wasn't on the last album. Mr. Joel Violette replaced me, and what a replacement! Joel's the whiz bam. He is awesome, and he would ask me, what'd you think of this track and this release? And I was like, David, you're still smoking. It's awesome. Like you're gonna go on to do great things. And he did. He had a European tour lined up. Everything was good to go. He was then over in was it Iraq or somewhere near the Middle East, and he was teaching yet again. So he had this amazing system. He was a well-educated man. He was a well-educated man. So he went over to raise funds, basically to do this. He
Yeah,
would pay for everything. Like David was one of a kind in terms of work ethic. He would raise the funds, execute the tour, get the proper people to do the job that he needed, and rinse and repeat. And so I thought, wow, this is the kind of person you want to model your life after, because they're successful and they're pushing forward. So David was something special. I know I go on about it a lot, but he definitely left his mark on me, if it's not
yeah,
clear by now.
yeah. Well, that I mean, it's awesome to hear you tell some of these stories. So you were on. So you did the Green album.
That's
Is that?
correct. Yes.
Yeah. What were some of your favorite songs on there? Because I mean, I know that's an impossible question, but the
It's
Green
not as
album,
impossible. There
the
is
Green album
one
is the
song.
yeah. Well, the Green album was the first one that I'd heard. You know, when I was
Oh,
younger,
even
and I
cooler.
just thought, wow, that is. I'd never heard anything like it. It kind of blends all the sounds that I really love. It puts them all together. It
Well, what's
was,
your favorite track of that?
and that's hard. It used to be "Don't Open the Wounds." Um, "Dirty Window of Opportunity" is up there. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Okay,
It's impossible for me to pick one.
my moment, because I have a different experience when I listen back to those tracks. I very much tried to activate my authentic self when I was trying to record these things. So David introduced me to a different way of recording, which was, we're on a timeline, get it done, don't mess around.
Yeah,
And you either find resistance to that and say like, well, F you and whatever, or you get in line and you do it. And that's the route I chose. I said, okay, there's something to what he's saying. So let's try this. Let's lean into that mode of thought. So the song that jumped out at me was Dirty Window of Opportunity in specific. So that song, when I listen to it, I go through a range of emotions, because I remember the emotional state I was in at the moment in time that I recorded that. So the solo in specific, I was in the studio with Mr. Miguel Goche and Sue St. Marie, and we're sitting down, and the ex at the time was just giving me some grief, just like I'd made a phone call just before saying, "Hey, I'm in the studio," kind of thing. I'm going to be doing this, and it was blah blah blah, and I was amped up. I was amped up. I was visibly uh, under distress, and so the producer Miguel goes, "Dude, like, what's going on? You're not okay. Like, we don't have to do this right now today." Uh, and then David goes, "No, no, no, no. You got to do this now." And then I was like, he's right. I will do this now. And there was this moment. I tell my friends this often, that there was a moment before Mike Tyson went into his first Olympics where he was scared shitless and didn't know what to do. Cus D'Amato comes out and he says, "Convert that energy, turn that fear into forward motion." And so I remembered that, and I was like, take all this anger and all this frustration and turn it into a solo right now. I said, "Miguel, you get me that Digitech Expression Factory, and we plug this in, and we're going to cut it." And we did it in like 2 takes. And that result of that solo was me living through all of that anguish in that very minute. And I just left it there. I let it bleed there. It was so bizarre. I came home with a full smile on my face, like I didn't even care about anything that had happened, because my therapy session was right there in the studio.
Yeah.
I let it die there. And that was the magic of what Woods kind of introduced me to, was working through, that era of my life in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I just channeled it into that.
I think that whole album helps sad, people that are going through stuff that are sad. We all have our moments where we're just in the pits. And I think that album resonates so with so many people because you can, like you said, bleed it out. You can bleed it out just listening and sitting, riding down the road and listening to that album and just letting all that shit out. It's a really positive thing. That was
That's
what
the
because
greatest.
that album hit me when I was in a low point, and it almost pulls you out. It's like there's somebody else that's verbalizing all these things that you feel, and yeah, I would have to agree that I think the experience that you had in the studio, I think a lot of people have shared that all around the world listening to that album.
That's probably the biggest compliment I could ever receive. I'm so grateful that it resonated in that way, because during the time of creating that uh, body of work, I wasn't thinking about the aftermath. I was very much engaged in my own uh, life, and I thought, wow, I can't believe it it resonated in that way,
Yeah,
but it truly did, and I love that. Um, that you share that kind of stuff with me, because it makes me say, well, it was all worthwhile. And that's why I tell people to get into music. I'm like, you know what? It can free you. It can save you. It can
yeah,
totally be something that pulls you out of the pits, just like you said, right? And uh, it's truly a gift. I always said I have a theory about people who make great music, that we're all a little off. We're all a little crazy. It's because we're so close to being in touch with some form of divinity that we can't quite explain, that it affects you, that you
yeah,
just become this vessel of what that is, and it comes out in the form of music, and people connect with that because it's something that's intangible. It's like, what is happening to me? Wow, I feel all these feelings where I didn't before, and watching it come alive, especially playing live, I do miss that. I would get to witness the direct effect of that. Oftentimes, people would say, uh, "Dude, you're an animal. Like, are you okay? Like, you look like you want to kill somebody," kind of thing. And I was like, "Oh, no, 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 no. I'm like Mr. Chill. I am cool as a cucumber. That guy that you see up there, he a different dude. So let's just get that straight."
yeah.
And I love that it activated that in people. Pour it out, let it out of you. And I'll be damned if I didn't get to see it many, many times across this great nation. So whew, it's drumming up a lot of old feelings here.
That's
How you
awesome.
doing?
That's awesome. Well, I mean, when you were making that music, it's impossible for you to know the reach and the effect that it would have all these years later.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't think about that. You're just thinking, just like when we make music, we just, we're just trying to get it down and make it sound great. And years later, people really hold on to that.
It's such a, you know, bizarre phenomena because it wasn't something I did this for. I would even often get accused of uh, being unfaithful on the road, and the times I should have been unfaithful on the road, I stand before you telling you that I was not, and
Yeah.
it was the most crazy thing that I could turn to that music and just activate that de-stressor. I could just leave it there, and it totally, just like it did for many others, it totally saved my ass. So
Yeah.
it's the healer, the feeler, and everything in between. But Woods of Ypres was my introduction to the reach. That was the part that kind of was humbling to me, was to see how far it would touch other people, even bands. Like I seen a photo once of it was Phil Anselmo with the Woods shirt on or something like that, and I was like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
just all kinds of crazy things that, well, even BAMP knowing about it, like how the hell am I supposed to know who's listening to this stuff, right? But
Right.
to have it come to you is just like, whoa, dude, cool.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the cult following is huge. And it seems as more and more people come to find this music, it's the more and more people that just really gravitate to it and love it. You know.
Well, we're into the next generation now, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
next it's just kind of overlapping into that, and that's when I'm getting a lot of these individuals come to me asking me what it was like to work with David, because by the time they found out about Woods of Ypres, he had already passed, and they felt that deep yearning to understand more about the music and the man that David Gould was. And I, man, I try to recount it the best that I can, and say things honestly as I can about that, but um, it still hits home knowing that that legacy was so far widespread. I'm still blown away, and I give all the props to Mama Gold, David Gould's mom. She is an iron horse. She is absolute beacon in my life for sure. We had a relationship before he passed. So I'll tell you a story about Mama Gold. I would I would always knock on the door and have something stupid to say because I knew David was going to answer it. But I always referred to him as Mr. Gold. Like, we had this like professional relationship. It was like, Mr. Gold, it's time to get to work. Let's do this. But just before that would happen, he would go on downstairs, kind of prepare things, and I would spend time talking with Mama Gold. And we would just talk about anything and everything, nothing in specific, but it was just this very connecting feeling that I felt so wonderful about. And she'd always make these like really healthy snacks and keep us energized and charged up, and give us these wonderful words of encouragement. And then old David would crack open the door and be like, okay, like, let's wrap this up. Let's go.
Yeah.
So we'd get into the work mode, and as Mama Gold, got duty's calling me here. Wrap this up, kind of thing. But after his passing, I felt that closeness was even far greater, um, because I still check up on her from time to time. I absolutely always just give her a little message. Hi, how's things going? And the answer's not always great, but I love that
Yeah.
sheer honesty, because that's what David was, right? He really reflected. It's like, don't sugarcoat it. Just give it to me straight. If it's shit, it's shit. If it's good, it's good. Period.
Yeah.
And I really liked that because there was no gray area to guess or dance around. It was like, bang, this is what we're
Right.
feeling today. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
He was a life teacher for me, for sure.
For sure. Yeah. I've spoken to Mama Gold. We have a relationship. I bought some shirts from her and we kept in touch, and we talked about October Noir, the band I'm in, and we had talked back and forth, and she would always give me these words that's very encouraging. It's always kind of lifting me up as if I've known her my entire life.
Yeah, she's
Which
special,
is
dude.
not something that's very common. Let's just be honest. That you know it her and I speaking, she's a complete stranger, yet I feel very warm, this huge warmness and kindness. And we had talked about, David, and she would tell me little stories here and there. And I thought that was really interesting. Obviously me and Matt from 616, we've been communicating since 2019, really since he first got, kind of got noticed with 616. So,
Wow.
we talk quite often.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had talked to Mama Gold about, I wanted to get some merch. I wanted to get some shirts and this and that. And so, yeah, I definitely understand everything you're saying.
She's authentic too. Like, don't ever think any of that's a facade. It really is
Yeah.
not. She even meeting her face to face, it's no different. She treats everyone equally and with that genuine heart. And it's such an inspiring thing. And I think that's why I kind of developed my own relationship with her, even independent of David, because I naturally, and I believe this is true for all human beings, intrinsically we want to be happy.
Yeah.
And when somebody activates that within you, you gravitate towards that positive nature. So I really felt that in her. And I was like, yeah, you really want this thing to blow up? And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm going to work my ass off to do this shit because you're helping me along with this whole thing. And she knew I was going through trouble and strife in my life at the time. And she'd sit down, she'd have some words of wisdom along the way. And I was like, holy shit, like she's really reaching out. This is amazing. Like she really is, as she says, as she puts it, MOM, mom of many. And I felt that for sure. And I never take it for granted because I'm like, wow, what kind of cool mom would let you make a bunch of racket in their basement for like
Yeah.
months on end?
Yeah. Let's be honest. We've been at a bunch of bands, and typically the parents are not super supportive. They don't want to hear that.
Oh God,
First,
no.
they don't want to hear that all weekend long when you're jamming and making noise. And yeah, so that's pretty cool.
That's the rock. Well, I have to say props to my own mother for letting me be a wild child in that too, because we lived in this little geez, what was it? What do you call those? The duplex, two houses kind of put together.
Yeah.
So I grew up. I'd be just getting into guitar, and of course, when you start, you suck ass, and so you kind of got to go through that period of just
Right.
hashing it out. And I'd be hashing it out, and those neighbors would be just pissed, and my mom would be out there just like, he's learning, like just let him be, kind of thing. And she went to bat for me, and it really allowed me to become what I have achieved. But you definitely go through those trials and tribulations of getting kicked out of places. The first iterations of Gates of Winter, same thing. We'd go to our one buddy's mom's place, and then after the first jam, it was like, it's not a good idea. Like we just totally pissed off everybody. And this happened. Oh man, it's commonplace. And the more bigger the city, the more difficult that is to find a place to kind of practice and get your chops up. So
Yeah.
you learn these ways to get good as silently as you can. I don't know how many hours I've spent with headphones on my head and just this little ting 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 ting.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
remember
that's
those
part of
days.
the craft.
I remember those days when I was younger because nobody wanted to hear you suck on guitar. So headphones were definitely required.
Oddly enough, I can't say I've ever felt that. That's never been said about me. Pretty grateful for that, but I was my own worst critic though.
Yeah.
If a note was out of place, I was the first one to say it and just no, do it 10 more times until it was just right. And the Woods experience expedited that because of that timeline. Because we had this like 3-month plan, and we'd say, okay, this recording, this day track, track this, track this, track this. And just like clockwork, we go in and show up and treat it just like a job. And it was awesome it made me a better guitar player because I had to structure my own learning within that time. Even the time he's like, here's a burned CD. I still have what he gave me. It's always got his little signature, like metal horns. He'd put the 2 slashes with the W in it. And it was the tracks, the the body tracks of just the Woods 4 song pieces. And he said, from here to here at these times, do your thing, make your solos. So, okay. And I remember saying, how long do I have? This good? About a week. Okay, let's do it. So I'd sit there in my computer in the corner of my room, just listening to this track. And I was like, how do you just become inspired, to
Right.
do something? And one of those tracks I did a slide. I did slide guitar with my distorted sound, and that just something that jumped out at me because I was listening to the track being played back, and then I kind of looked up on the top of my desk, and my slide was sitting there. I was like, it's not like I'm a big slide guitarist by any stretch. I would never profess to be a professional in that sense, but I was just like, who's heard slide in metal? How often does that come up? Let's do
Yeah,
it. So
wasn't that Don't Open the Wounds? Wasn't that it? The
I
slide.
can't even remember the name of the track. That's embarrassing.
No, I think it was.
It stands out when you hear it though, because it's slide. It's
I
like
Yeah, I'm hearing it in my
it,
mind right now. I love that.
and it was just that moment of, hey, let's break the mold. Let's do something different. Let's just make some tell a story with the guitar the best you can. And the slide for that moment was the right thing to tell that story with.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of that was my contributions to Woods, was how to take the box and just break it open and start introducing new concepts. And I did a lot more uh, guitar gymnastics in Gates of Winter than I did with Woods of Ypres, but that was by design because I didn't want to bring uh, Woods of Ypres featuring guitars from Gates of Winter, Brian Bell. I didn't want that.
Yeah.
I wanted to integrate into the sonic realm that was being presented, and I thought, dial her down, listen to the chug, listen to the thickness. What does that call for in a solo? And so they were a lot more simplistic, a little bit more repetitive, but it was because of that rhythmic trance set by Mr. Evan Madden's drums that I was really listening and dialing into that kind of mentality. It's like reanimate your thinking to create these sounds. And oh man, that was such an awesome experience
Yeah.
to say, what, stop being a friggin' Yngwie Malmsteen for 10 seconds and let's see what else is there. And that's what came out was Woods 4 and
Yeah.
made me a
Well,
better player.
yeah, less is more oftentimes. Less is more,
It's not what anybody said.
especially with the chords, and the whole vibe, the atmosphere of Woods. Less is more. It gives it room to breathe. And you
You know
really
what
do sink in.
I'd like to think that you create the space for your thoughts to populate that. And that's where you start to generate your own ideas of what the song means and what's happening to you. And it's something you can even like study to or do an
Right.
activity to. And you need to leave a bit of room with the Woods realm. I'm only speaking for that. You need to leave a bit of room for that to happen. Uh, just to dial into that like extra sludge. I loved that sludge, the palm muted chugs. To me, that was like all about what we did, and we just hammer them. And I could feel it in my heart. It was just like, oh yeah, there it is.
Well, since you're
You
talking
can't
about
win it.
palm muted chugs, I have a question. Tell me about the
Sure.
single. Tell me about the single Home that had You Were the Light and Falling Apart on it.
Oh, that was post my era.
Was it?
That that happened just after David did tell me though that was like the leftovers of what should have been on the Green album. However, just because it jammed the time span, it
Yeah.
was like a full 60, 70 minutes, something like that. There was no room left for any other tracks. So these other two tracks came out, but that was right after my time. And there's still videos of him recording those tracks in the studio, because it was in the same studio that Woods 4 was created in. But those two albums, when they came out, I was like, whoa, damn. You
Yeah.
still, it still had that feel from the Woods 4, like for
Absolutely.
sure.
It sounded
And it
like
smacked.
it
It
just
was awesome.
rolled right off of it.
Yeah, I complimented David a lot about that in that time. And I feel like when we parted, it was definitely on good terms. Nothing, there was no bad blood whatsoever. It was like I was I left, or I completed college, and he said, we're shaping up to do an American tour. Uh can you do this? And I said, well, I gotta sort it out with the ex at the time, and then there was a complication there with the answer and the time period by which I could answer the question. And so Mr. Joel Violette filled my spot. And again, I have nothing but great things to say about Joel.
Yeah.
He is the shit, and I couldn't be more honored to be replaced by anybody else. But long story short, I I felt disappointed in myself that I didn't capitalize on that, but at the same time, it is what it is. And I always told David, I see this as a business. If there's something that I don't fulfill, then replace me. Period. I need
Yeah.
to be a cog in the wheel, and I need to not think that I'm above anyone else in that. And so my humble approach ultimately ended up to my departure from the band. But it went on to do things that I never thought were imaginable, like win a Juno Award, like
Yeah.
Home, you know, all of those amazing things happening after was just like, yeah, you were destined to do this stuff. You were absolutely on the trajectory to become the Peter Steele of the world. Like that influence
Yeah.
absolutely is identical. So I love watching it grow. I love watching those seeds that were planted so many years ago becoming full-blown trees now and in the hearts of many people along the way. It's something I stuns me still. I guess I'm gobsmacked, so to speak.
Well, it's definitely awesome. There's no other way to put it. I mean, that band has touched the hearts and minds of so many people. It I would imagine it is humbling. Um,
I've it brought me some wonderful friends too. Even as far as Poland and Portugal, people that I speak to on a regular basis. I got to have some wonderful conversations with these people for many, many years, and just kind of explain my experience and hear them out too. Because one of my favorite parts about what Woods is I love asking people what it brought them out of or what it did for them. What's your Woods experience? Because I feel ultimately that's what the body of work is about. What does it mean to you,
yeah.
regardless of the content? And we'll always have our own story to tell when we listen to Woods of Ypres. Any one of the albums, any one of them. I have my reflections of what each album means and along the way, but I really take pride in listening to people's versions of their experience in that. So, even yours, it's like when you were going through a hard time, what was that for you that really activated something that said this was special?
Well, I mean, the first one was the Green album, and it just seemed like everything I was feeling and going through was all written. It was like a manual. I mean, it was an audible manual that I could just start the album and let it go, and it just, I don't know, it just really lifted my spirits. It almost felt like there was somebody right beside me in the mud, digging, helping me dig my way out. with it. I mean,
That's so
music that really speaks to your situations and your feelings at the time. I mean, it's almost like a guiding light to help you out. The light at the end of the tunnel, I
absolutely.
suppose.
And it's pretty cool to know that it has that capability even to this day, you know.
Yeah.
I, like I said, I still get the new generation kind of approaching me from time to time. And I can't profess to know everything there is to know about woods. Again, I had a little period of time that I was involved with it, and
Yeah.
lucky enough that I did have that little bit of time. But I I was very present in the moment when I was there, and I did know I had to do the very best that I could because it had the potential to reach far and wide as it did. And so even if I knew back then that my time could be finite, I, I, it didn't matter to me. It really didn't matter that I had A to B. I just said, well, if that's what you got to work with, then you're going to put your best foot forward. You're going to represent yourself the best you can. And I would never be late to anything, not ever. I was always there, and we did some good work. And I'm very proud of that body work. And it's the reason why we're talking today, even. I
Yeah.
mean, what a crazy perfect example, a paragon, if you will, of exactly what we're talking about. So yeah, it's pretty much the story of my life to interface with those who have been touched by Woods of Ypres,
Yeah.
especially in a positive way. You know, it's not like people listen to it and say, I want to do bad things. It's quite the opposite.
Right.
I was going through something challenging, and there was a voice for that. And happened to be David's.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the Green Album is a masterpiece in my opinion. And I know that a lot of people feel the same way. And when I started doing this show and this, the radio and all this, I really thought, man, if I could sit down and talk to this person or that person, it might really touch somebody. And to hear your stories of David, because I know that everybody wants to hear about David Gold, and it's because he's passed, and you know the band members and stuff, they knew him better than anybody besides Mama Gold. So I think people are really going to enjoy listening back to this, and I've really enjoyed talking to you about some of this stuff. It's
Oh,
actually
likewise.
it's actually an honor. So
Hey, likewise, and all the great things you said about the Green Album. I'm more than floored, and I'm still very humble that it has that effect. And for what it's worth, I'm definitely going to be binging on October Noir now because I got to catch up and get my head back in the game because I very much want to re-enter the metal realm. But
yeah,
I gotta change my roles because I got a 3-month-old daughter now that's in the equation. So I know that kind of going on the road regularly would not be something I'd be interested in. But being part of things, contributing to projects,
yeah,
oh dude, give me a call. I'm in. That's what me and Mr. Lidwin do. So any type of recording or solo work, that kind of stuff. I'm all in it. I love putting my stamp on stuff and being part of that metal community. And that's another thing I can say about Canada. It's probably one of the greatest places to tour because when we toured across the country, we could go on the mic and say, "Anybody got a place to crash?" And I every single time there was multiple offers. Breakfast was cooked for us. We were treated like royalty, and I just thought to myself, damn, this is cool. And it's funny, I heard that from bands we've played with that were from across the ocean. They said like the Scandinavian countries have a lot of the shredders and stuff, but they say it's not like touring over here in Canada. They're like they don't really care. It's like fend for yourself kind of thing. And when they come over to Canada, whoa, no, you're royalty over here, and they
yeah.
they felt that and reflected that. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Like a little bit of Canadian hospitality shining through again. But yeah, anyways, here I am rambling.
No, it's awesome. Well, look, man. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I feel like we ought to wrap this up, and I tell you what, let's talk again sometime very soon.
Absolutely, man. I really hope we do get to communicate more often and check out all of the recordings of the Woods of Ypres body of work. It's all on all of the major um, media outlets, Spotify, Apple Music, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, dude, gratitude is the currency of the universe, and it's something that I like to tell people along the way, and not to forget that. So I guess those are my parting words for this interview. And
Awesome.
thank you for coming to me and talking to me, dude.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate the time, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. You take
All right.
care.
Take it easy. See ya.